This is AJ Wachtel. Welcome to my podcast, Wachtelligence, where I discuss with my guests the past, present, and future of the local and national music scene with a focus on Boston and New England. Today's episode, Dan Vitale, dynamically directing Bim Skala Bim Ska, punk, reggae, and Caribbean cadences, is about the iconic life and career of one of the most important and remarkable rock-steady musicians alive today. Dan shot to fame in the 1980s and the ska punk explosion of the 1990s as the premier performer of the Boston blue beat sound, primarily upbeat, two-tone ska. In the beginning, his band Bim Skala Bim was a member of the third wave of ska. You've heard his music on all the local radio stations, on film soundtracks, and his song Paraguayan Sun is on the outro of the tabletop gaming podcast Cast Dice. Dan's also a filmmaker and is the driving force behind the recently released documentary Chet's Last Call about the late owner of Boston's principal punk club 40 years ago, during Boston's first punk invasion. Currently, Jump Up Records in Chicago is releasing a 3-song, 7-inch single to celebrate Bim's 40th anniversary. The EP will feature 3 of the band's already recorded covers from Bim's huge song catalog and will include their 1988, 35 years ago, folks, cover of the Beatles' Rain, which they did for my first project, the double white compilation album, Boston Does the Beatles, from Stowe, Massachusetts, and now living in Bocas Del Toro, Panama, running a bed and breakfast Lookout Point retreat. Dan remains the fantastic frontman for Bim, and as always, directs their super ska sound, still setting standards and entertaining fans in their 5th decade of making music. It's with great pleasure I say, welcome to Wachtelligence, Dan.
Hey, that was really nice. Thank you for that great intro, AJ. It's great to see you. It's great to talk to you.
We go back forever, man. You know, and this is just fun. I was looking at you smiling, and I'm smiling. And, let's get right into it. Bim formed in 1983, and you're from Stowe, which is halfway between Boston and Worcester. Were you more into the Worcester scene or the Boston scene?
Well, at first, some of the early live shows that I saw were the Fools, and I loved them. I used to get into clubs when I was like 13 and 14, a place called the Cinema Lounge in Leominster, Mass. I'm sure the Fools remember it. They played there really regular. And they were one of my very favorite bands. But I could get in when I was 14. I was using my older brother's ID and stuff like that. It was only 18 at the time. My brother wound up being a bartender at that club. So, geez, I can't say how many times I probably saw the Fools. And honestly, the fact that they played some reggae with "It's a Night for Beautiful Girls,"
right?
It was kind of rock steady, kind of reggae, kind of ska punk. It's just it was really early on for me. Like, what is that? So that was one of my very first early influences, is the Fools. And we had to go to places like Leominster and Worcester. They were a bit closer, and but we went to Boston pretty early on too. By the mid '70s, we going to places on Lansdowne Street and stuff like that, using our fake IDs to get in.
So how'd you meet all the guys in Bim, the original band?
Let's see. Well, John Ferry was my roommate, the trombone player, and we had been working in Central Square. We opened the offices for the statewide campaign for the mass nuclear referendum campaign. I had been working for Greenpeace, but I was actually left Greenpeace to work for the mass nuclear referendum campaign. I was the assistant campaign manager as a teenager, living right across the street from the Itones there in Cambridgeport, back where my family was from originally. My Irish family moved to Cambridgeport back in the early 1900s, maybe 1913. But so I'm a Cambridge guy from way back.
Right.
But yeah, and John Ferry was my roommate. And when we won the nuclear referendum campaign in '82, we're like, what are we going to do now? And we both loved reggae so much and ska that we decided that's what we were going to try and do, even though we were, poor white boys or whatever you want to call it. It was we had the iTunes across the street from where we were living, so we were like, if they got white guys in the band, we could do this. We could do this. So it was very difficult at the time for an all-white band to try and pull off reggae or ska for that matter. And but we took this sort of the specials route with a real punk attitude towards it, I guess you'd say. And got started back in 1982. We were involved in a place. I was very interested in film and recording music, and there's this place getting started up in Somerville called the Somerville Media Action Project, or SMAP. And Mark Ferranti was working there when I applied to work there as a volunteer. And I got my younger brother and sister to apply there as students. We had lost our mother a year or two previous. And we were pretty, struggling family. And I thought this was a great idea, an arts thing that is basically catering towards children with family problems like losing a parent and so forth. And anyway, my sister and brother got in. My brother wound up being the assistant engineer at the studio which Somerville Media Action Project set up. It was in Davis Square, by the way. I don't know if a lot of people have heard of it, but it was a great thing for a while. They had a grant writer, and he got some great grants, and they built a beautiful.
John Ferry's still in that area, and I think he's still playing in bars all around that area in Cambridge.
Well, Davis Square has come a long, long way. It used to be junk shops and the discount pie shop and things like that. It was one of the cheapest places that you could rent an apartment. And so I think we paid $450 a month for a 5-bedroom apartment. And Mark Ferranti, who we knew from SMAP, moved in with us because we decided we were going to start a band. Mark's still the bass player. He's been with me for 40 years now. It's our 40th anniversary, 1983. We started, and the rest of the guys all came in in about 1985. We originally in '83 we had a girl who was only 15, 16 years old.
Jackie Starr.
No, it's actually Robin Ducott. Jackie was 19 or 20 when she started back in '87, I think. But in '83, this girl Robin, who just walked in off the street and said, "I want to join your band," and she's still very active in the Boston scene in that she's a costume designer, and she worked. What was the name of that theater group that was doing shows every year at the Middle East? And they did Jesus Christ Superstar with the singer from anyways. They did a lot of different shows, but my guitar player Jim Jones and Mark were very involved in that with Robin, decades after Robin was in the band, and Robin still is involved in the theater in Boston, theater scene in Boston. Our guitar player was only 17, and he fell in love with Robin, as did the drummer, who was only 18. And their parents all made them quit because they were failing out of high school. So that's why we sort of had to reorganize the band somewhere around 1984, 85. And we got all pretty much ringers from Berkeley. Jim R. Helger, Vinny Nobile, John Cameron, all Berkeley students.
Wait, excuse me. I just want to point out to everybody listening that before Dan and I know each other for a long time, and he's coughing now. I smoked at Chillum, and I'm not coughing, and he smoked.
Well, you
at
coughed,
joint.
but you're done. But you coughed but you stopped coughing. I'm still coughing for some reason. I should have rolled a
I just wanted to point that out to everybody.
One of the things that AJ and I will do pretty much every single time we see each other is smoke a chillum or smoke a joint. But yeah, that's also been a big part of our music in that, let's see, we did it on all ska, all compilation about smoking weed and the medicinal uses for weed back in the early 90s, I think it was. No, late 90s, called Joint Ventures in Ska with bands from all around the world, including Selector. And it was a great project. But we've always believed that ganja should be legal. We've done the Freedom Rally as well. And at the Freedom Rally, we wound up meeting the people who worked at High Times. In 1999, they put one of our songs, that whole album as the #1 album of the year in 1999. We really, everybody in the band at one time or another smoked. Many of us still do. I'm going to cough again.
Sins away down at your laundromat today. And when the washes get you done, we're gonna have us a little fun. You know your laundromat is not a laundromat like any laundromat you've ever seen. When you're washing and you're drying and you're folding your clothes, you can rock to the music machine. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh, oh.
Listen, I want to ask you, how did you get the name Bim Skala Bim?
Well, it's a permutation of Simsalabim, which is a common Arabic greeting. But I didn't know it was that. I just knew it from something that Bugs Bunny and the Three Stooges would say when they would be in an Arabian costume and acting like a genie. So that's how I knew it. That's how I knew it. But I wasn't sure how to say it. And of course, we had heard a lot of reggae, and a lot of times the chatters would say Bimma, and so, and then later I found out that it had a reflection of Bim and Bam, who was one of the very early on ska bands, Mentor ska band, and a comedy team. But it was one of them. When they were called Bim and Bam, and everybody in Jamaica knew, then that's one of the reasons why they used to say Bim, or it's just sort of a joyful sound, I guess. So anyway, we were originally, what were we called? I wanted to be called Fall of Babylon, and nobody liked that. So that we decided on Babylon Project, because we lived in a rough part of Somerville. Anyway, when I came up with Bim Skala Bim, I gave the band the choice. Either Sim Sala Bim, or Sim Skala Bim, or Bim Skala Bim, or Zim Sala Bim, and everybody decided on Bim Skala Bim, and it kind of worked at the time. Also, I have to say this: in 1983, the only other band I knew with the word ska in their name was the Cadences,
right?
Or pretty much the original ska band from Jamaica, and so now. There is about 1,000 bands with the word ska in the name, in the title of their group. So it was something that it kind of really went. You've got all kinds of uses and bizarre uses of the word ska within the band name, like Skapository and stuff like that, Ska Rotum, and just the most bizarre stuff. And it's an interesting story about the Scatolites too, because very early on. In 1986, at I'm gonna get the name of the club wrong. Jeez, in Central Square, kind of across the street from the Middle East and down, there was a club, and we had just started to get some airplay on our first album, and they invited us to open for them. And it was a real life-changing experience in that we got to meet these guys who barely anybody had heard of in 1986, but we had heard of them and we really looked up to them. And it was all the original members. They all had been friends with Bob Marley. And
well, they're from Jamaica. I mean,
yeah.
Did you ever play Jamaica?
No, we played in Bermuda is about as close as we've gotten.
You were in the third wave of ska. What were the first two ska?
The first wave was Scatolites and Bob Marley and Jimmy Cliff and Toots from Jamaica in the very late 50s and through the early 60s. And then it moved into rock steady and then reggae. But in America, in England, it was the two-tone movement right out of London in Britain with the Specials and Selector and Bad Manners and English Beat. And that was 1979, sort of that started in 78.
And UB40, The Clash.
Absolutely. And anyway, in America, it's sort of bands like us and the Toasters started in early 80s. And there were very, very few American bands. We didn't have the influence that that class Britain had, because so many Jamaicans imported and were working class in Britain as well.
Right.
And that's how they got turned on to the music, like quite a bit before Americans did. And that's why and America's, of course, huge comparatively. And so it took a long time to sort of spread the word. Much of the first many years we were together, when we would be interviewed, they'd say, "What is that? What is that?" And we'd explain to them that we're playing, Jamaican influenced music, that's ska and reggae and rock steady, and where it came from and how it started, and
rock and roll and calypso. Everything was in your music.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the things American ska is known for is mixing it up a little bit more with though ska came out of American influences like Fats Domino, because the poor Jamaicans only had radio, and so
right.
they were getting radio from Nashville and Memphis on a clear day if it bounced off the sea correctly, and so they were listening to a lot of Fats Domino and a lot of the old rhythm and blues, and that had a huge effect. And so it's sort of a combination of mento and rhythm and blues and calypso that sort of got ska to where it was, and it sort of came at the same time as the Jamaican independence. So it was a big sort of celebratory thing, and Jamaicans really wanted their music that they originated, though it was very influenced by American rhythm and blues. So we brought a lot of, depending on the song, of course, we'd like to bring rhythm and blues influence into the music as well.
Right.
And that goes right along with rock and roll.
Well, you and the Toasters from New York City were the big bands, in the third wave of ska we're just talking about. How was the New York City scene?
We were like the big, so much that we were the big bands as we were the only bands. There was a couple in California, Untouchables being the one I would mention, and Fishbone with that great EP that they put out in the mid 80s. But there was a dozen all over America. That's all there was for ska bands. So most people didn't know what it was. But then it just really started to snowball, and there's thousands. There's thousands of ska bands around the world now.
Well, how was New York City different than Boston?
Well, New York City was harder to get a gig, but we used to do very well there because we got started at CB's, and we would do really well at CB's, and the other clubs figured out who's doing, people who are doing well at CB's will do well, in other places. And
did you play CB's because of Jimmy Harold?
He was a fan, and he got records on very early. But no, that was one of the things that we did with the Toasters was shared info and shared gigs. I brought them to the channel, and they brought us to CBGB. I mean, it's pretty much as simple as that. And we did that with lots and lots of bands as there became more bands. Detroit Gangster Fun started in the later '80s, and we began to get a lot of Boston ska bands. You know, guys that were our roadies and roommates started the Elstonian. But lots of bands started to come together. The Boss Tones, who were just the Boss Tones when they first started, and
a lot of people say if it wasn't for Bim Skala Bim, there would be no mighty mighty Boss Tones. Care to comment on that?
Well, I think they say that because Dickie and Joe said that. Dickie and Joe were friends of mine. We did shows together. I did shows with Dickie when Dickie had a band called the Cheapskates, and I really liked more liked their ska side than their punk side, just because that's what I liked. But I was very interested, and that's how we met. I put them on shows opening for us really early on. I mean, I think 83, 84. And so then I think the Boston was probably started in 84, 85. Joe Gittleman was only 15, I think, maybe 16. So it took them a while to get it together, but they definitely stuck with it.
You're just another snake in the grass. You keep yourself caught in. Grab on something that will last. My patience is wearing thin. You made the call, you said it all. You thought you mixed right in. You may be smart, but what's to start? I wish you'd just begin. Oh, your head's so fat you can hardly move. Got your feet stuck on the ground. How right should you be before it's time to blink? Who do you think you are? You can't just push so far, cause otherwise it's all a waste of time.
You know, it's been said that Bim bridged the gap between the two-tone era and the ska punk explosion of the 1990s. Care to comment on that?
Well, yeah, we were a bridge to that. Even in the aspect that a lot of the two-tone bands in the early '80s weren't really doing much, to the point where no booking agency was willing to bring Bad Manners over in 1987. I had met them before a show I think we did in '86, and I said, okay, I'll try this. And I brought Bad Manners over in 1987 and Laurel Aiken, or '87 or '88, and then we went back and forth like that, kind of like what we did with the Toasters. But I brought Bad Manners to America. Bad Manners brought us to England and Europe, and that went on for years. I wish there were more originals in the band, but I still in communication with many of them, and working on songs actually with Nick Welsh from also known as King Hammond from the both Selector and Bad Manners. Nick.
Hey, what original members are still in Bim today?
Original from 1983, it's just Mark and I. But from 1985, it's Jim Jones is still the guitar player since 1985. Jim R. Helger is still the drummer since 1985. John Cameron still plays on the records and plays occasionally, and he joined the band in 1985 as well. Rick Barry, who joined the band, was playing with the band. He was in Bam Bam. I don't know if you remember Bam Bam, but Rick was, we used to play with Bam Bam, and Rick would sit in with us. But Rick officially joined the band, I think, in 1986, and he's on the first album. Ken Field from Skin is on the first album as well, and he sat in with us a lot. But yeah, we have, Vinny still plays with us a lot, and Vinny's been in the band for well over 30 years. So it's amazing how many people are still original members. Basically, to be honest with you, we've got about a dozen albums, and every album has Mark, myself, Jim Jones, Jim R. Helger, and Rick Barry. Every single one, and John Cameron.
Bim Skala Bim, you were just talking about first album in 1986. You became pretty national pretty quickly.
Our first album got onto the cover of CMJ. Like, somebody decided they really liked our first album, so that got us off to a great
I
start.
know who liked you, and I even spoke to her. She's my cousin Amy. My cousin
yeah, Amy was instrumental. How could I forget that?
Here's a quote from my cousin Amy Wachtel, who was the founder and editor of the college music journal's Reggae Root section of the New Music Report. Amy Boston radio credits included WCAS, AM, WLYN, FM, Free WFNX, WZBC, WERS, and currently she's the night nurse. If you're a ska and reggae fan, you know who she is. You listen to her, and she's a DJ on WPKN out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And what she says about you. When I was doing internet radio 2012 to 2016 on Radio Lily inside a storefront in Miss Lily's in New York City, Dan used to listen to my shows and send me unreleased Bim tracks. She sent me a personal note to you also. Hey, Dan, it's the night nurse checking in. When I heard that Wachtelligence would be talking to you, I wanted to big you up and thank you for all the joy and music you brought to us via Bim Skala Bim. I also have regards to you from the old Steady Earnest days tuba player, Sam Schwartz.
Yeah, I'm a fan of her the Night Nurse show and have been for a long time, and I listen to it when I can, and Sam, it's a good story because Sam has been invited to play on the new Steady Earnest reunion album that we're doing, sort of 30-year thing. 30 years ago we started Steady Earnest. So
what's the difference between the music of Steady Earnest and Bim Skala Bim?
Let's see. Steady Earnest is focuses more on rock steady and ska, I think, with a kind of different rock edge, like an earlier rock edge with, like, say, an Elvis kind of well, we'd even do an Elvis song, but kind of an old rock. Well, That's All Right Mama. Kind of an old rock kind of thing, like early rock, let's call it, kind of thing, or a Buddy Holly meets ska kind of thing, to me anyway. I think that everybody who listens to the two bands can tell the two bands apart. The Steady Earnest didn't have any keyboards for the first three albums, and now we do. Ken Stewart of the Scatolites has been playing with us on this new stuff. One song which just came out this week, our first original single in a long time. It's called "Feel the Rush." Check it out. We have a free MP3 on the Steady Earnest site, Facebook and YouTube. But we also have a song coming out on a compilation soon. But we had a song on the Specialized compilation back in November, Wrong'em Boyo, which the Clash covered, an old Jamaican song. But yeah, it's been really fun to get back together with Steady Earnest, even though it's all been done remotely because I'm in Panama and Art's in North Carolina, Mark's in Baltimore area, and Jack's in Los Angeles.
Hey, how'd you get the name Steady Earnest?
That's an interesting story. A lot of ska people originated by being fans of Prince Buster, and a lot of, like, the Specials and the two-tone movement, Madness and the Specials, all many other bands covered Prince Buster songs, and I'm like, I always loved this song, "Take It Easy," which Prince Buster song that none of them had covered. So we're right away we're like, that's one of the songs that Steady Earnest is going to cover on our list of songs, because Steady Earnest also does more covers than Bim, I would say, of old stuff. Not a lot, but that's one of the things that makes us different, is that we cover some more old Jamaican stuff. But anyway, I'm trying to figure out the words to this song, because back then in the 80s, you couldn't just look up the words to a song. You would have to figure it out. And so I made a mistake I was sure that the words were have some fish and chips and a cup of tea, steady earnest, and just rock steady. But it's steady your nerves, as it turned out many years later.
That's
But
funny.
so we wound up calling the band Steady Earnest because I just thought couldn't figure out the lyric, and that was as close as I could come at the time. I was pretty sure it was wrong, but I was also pretty sure it was a good band name. So that's how.
And getting back to your national exposure, how you're getting bigger and how everything is just coming. I remember in 1997, you went on tour, Bim, the Dropkick Murphys, and the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. And Rick Barton from the Outlets and Continental, with his son now in band, he was in the Dropkick Murphys.
Yes, he sure was. I mean, I like to tell this story that I played Kenny's wedding before the Dropkick Murphys started. Steady Earnest played Ken Casey's wedding, and that was the day that Mike and Ken came up to me. We were all friends because Ken and Mike would come to Bim shows all the time, especially
Right.
at Jackson, and go nuts. And Ken used to hire us to do shows once he became a promoter of shows, which he was very successful at. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but early on, before Ken started the band, for a few years he was doing, putting shows together at places like the Cyclorama. But he would just such a great promoter that the shows would be packed, and it would blow our minds how many people Kenny could get out. Anyway, at the wedding, we finished one of the sets, and he's, "Come here, Dan. Mike and I want to talk to you. We want to tell you we're starting a band." So that's I love to tell that story because the next, then over the next few weeks, they rehearsed like crazy. And one of their, I think it was one of their very first tours was that Boston on the Road tour with the Bosstones and us and Amazing Royal Crown. That was quite a time in '97. It was our first time in a new tour bus. We had a couple of shitty tour buses, and we decided that we were better off with two vans. So we toured mostly with two extended vans because there was 9 of us for most of our touring life. Because we traveled with a sound man, and anyway, yeah, that's how that happened.
So that tour, that was right in the midst of you being the big Boston blue beat sound, representative of that sound. What was the Boston blue beat sound?
Well, I think that was we didn't coin that. Initially, we were way more popular in England and Europe than we were in America. When we put out the album in '86, somehow it got to England. I don't know if I sent some or what, but even though it wasn't readily available there, we got our first record offer. We put out the album ourselves. I paid for it, the band paid for it. We boxed it all up and made a list and sent out several hundred to radio stations around America. But we relatively quickly got a record offer from a label in Wales. And it was called Oi, or Oi Ska. Oi Records was already well established and well known, but he wanted to do a subsidiary called Oi Ska Records. And that's how we got known in England pretty quickly, is that we had a record. Our first 2 records came out there pretty much right away after they came out in America, within a few months. So that was real helpful. We wound up going to Europe first time in '88, and a lot of shows with Bad Manners and Laurel Aitken and Prince Buster. Just the fact that we got to do these things when we were so young, and they liked us. Like the fact that the Scatolites liked us. And Prince Buster actually stood there in the middle of the dance floor and gave me a big hug after the set. It was all very inspiring to us. We didn't exactly know how to take it, other than the fact that we were sure we were doing the right thing. But
you were just talking about the specials. Singer Terry Hall just passed away. What do you think his legacy should be?
Love, love, love. That was a quote that he's known for, and just the fact that we all have to get along. and the whole two-tone movement is about, not looking to color to define a type of music, and that it should, all music is for all people, and we can easily join together. And it's like the song Gumbo that's on that's on our new album Sonic Tonic. When I say gumbo, I mean it to, like my daughter is mother is black, and anyway, we don't think about it anymore. And the idea of playing music and being influenced by other cultures is a great one. You wouldn't have gumbo unless the French and the blacks got together in New Orleans, kind of thing. The more cultures that can get along and create, let the music morph together, then the sounds are very creative and interesting, and music moves on. Music is new again,
Right.
with combining two influences. Like Paul Simon did or something with Graceland, or the idea of joining musical cultures and influences without going too far and appropriating. That was one of the things we were very worried about. Not every single reggae musician that I met, back when there weren't many ska bands, we opened for reggae shows, and a lot of them. And oftentimes we were maybe the only white people in the audience or the bands. But mostly all the responses we got, like King Sunny Ade, big hugs, loved us, and that just blew our minds that he would even bother to talk to us. And just so many, Burning Spear, so many of the reggae bands that we opened for, and African music that we opened for, the Haitian music that we opened for. A lot of it.
You bring up Haitian bands. I remember when I was covering the music scene of Boston for the Beat magazine, I would go to the Western Front, which was owned by a black guy. And on Sunday, they had reggae music. And on Sundays, they would have Haitian bands. And that was way different than having any other night of the week. Haitian bands, I was the only white guy in that club, and everybody would be staring at me. And these are guys that were packing. They were guys fighting. These were rough Haitian guys. And there was a couple of times that I had, moments in there that if I wasn't colorblind, I'd be a dead man right now. You just got to be like that. Too many people aren't like that.
I always have been. I would go to
Me too.
I would go to Jamaica, and I would wind up at these clubs, and definitely the only white guy there. And of course, I live in an all black. I'm not all black village, because there's a small percentage of white people here. But I've never been uncomfortable with it, though others may be. I'm not.
Yeah.
So it's just, and I also, part of the reason is because I've also I go to where I love the music.
In 1988, 35 years ago, you handed me the first reel-to-reel master for me and Mickey O's first compilation album project, Boston Does the Beatles. You handed me a cover of the song Rain. And you told me afterwards, why'd you pick Rain? And after that you told me you didn't like it, you didn't do it live afterwards. Why didn't you like this song? What would you do to make it better?
Oh, it definitely wasn't me. Now I'm singing the low octave on that. It's a 3 or 4 part vocal. But Jim Jones, the guitar player, is playing the lead, is singing the lead, and it was his idea. Or I guess it was his idea that we cover the song because it wasn't mine. So I love the song. I thought it was your idea that we covered the song, to tell you the truth.
No,
but
it wasn't.
I don't know.
I just asked you to do it, and you said, "Sure, let's do it."
You know what? It was maybe '87. We were working with Jimmy Miller at the time, so it's actually produced by Jimmy Miller. But we weren't allowed. I don't know if you remember this. We weren't allowed to use Jimmy Miller's name at that time. But we're re-releasing it, and we're using Jimmy's name. It was Jeff Dovner, Newbury Sound, but it was Jimmy and Jeff. And while I was singing my part for Rain, a certain ex-manager of Jimmy Miller broke into the Newbury Sound, demanded that we stop recording, and that we pay him some kind of percentage. Of course, Jimmy had told me that he had fired this manager. And
was that Joe Viglione?
I'm not going to say his name.
It was Joe Viglione.
So that's what I remember most about recording that song, was that Joe Viglione and Newbury Sound at the time. I believe we were paying $80 an hour, and we weren't a band with a lot of money, believe me. So he came in and broke up the session, wasted hundreds of dollars, upset Jimmy, upset the vibe, and so that may have to do with why but listening back to the version of Rain now, if that's remastered, which it will be for this vinyl that comes out this year, it's going to be even better. But it did come out good, I think.
Yeah. So tell me, it's going to come out. It's going to come out on the record company from Chicago.
7-inch vinyl exclusively. Rain and Run Joe on one side. Run Joe was recorded with Tom Waltz at Waltz Audio there at BFBF. I don't know if you remember BFBF in 1999. And the other song is Bring It On Home to Me, also recorded in 1999. The record label Chuck in Chicago wanted 3 of the rarest covers that we've ever done, and you can't even get the Bring It On Home to Me really anywhere in America. And Rain is on your compilation, which is pretty rare at this point. And Run Joe is on a B-sides only compilation that's fairly rare. So that's why he chose the 3 songs, because he also thinks that he had decided that he only wanted to use covers for this. But also some of the rarest stuff. So
Dan, thanks for keeping my idea alive.
Yeah, imagine that it's coming out on a fresh 7-inch remastered. What is it? 35 years later.
35 years later. I remember when you handed me the reel-to-reel. It was at the TAM in Beacon Street in Brookline. You were gigging there.
We actually probably the only ones that made the deadline, right? We were the first ones to hand me.
You were the first band to hand me that. You followed me and supported my idea, and we're still friends all these years later. We've been good friends forever. The band Bim Skala Bim went on hiatus in 2002, and you reformed for the recording and release of your album Chet's Last Call in 2013. Why did you call it Chet's Last Call?
We were having a hell of a time deciding on a name. I mean, it was one of those times where, I don't know, hundreds of album titles, and it was just ridiculous. It was just getting ridiculous. And this is after we hadn't put out an album in, I think it was 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
No.
More.
Sorry, 13 years. Yeah. We hadn't put out an album in 13 years. We had taken a 7-year break.
Right.
And we when we came back in 2000 maybe 9, we just got a great response, and we were, flabbergasted with how well things went. Kind of like, certain Boston bands get back together. I don't have to say names, but do better than they even did originally. Anyway, after that 7 years, when we got back together, people were really happy to see us again, and we promised. I think it was Jim Sullivan of the Herald or the Globe that we would. Because he asked us directly, "Are you going to do another album?" And we just looked at each other and go, "Yes." we hadn't even really thought about it yet, but then it comes out in a major Boston paper, and that sort of helped us get motivated. And we wrote the songs for Chet's Last Call. But I mean, in the end, when Rick Barry, our percussionist, finally said, "Why don't we just call it Chet's Last Call?" This is before Chet died. This is before. It was just kind of a tribute to the fact that we got started at Chet's Last Call. And it seemed, and everybody agreed on it one time. Everybody said yes. And that very rarely happens in a band with 8 members or 7 members. Most of the time somebody gets outvoted, kind of thing to agree on the title. We were a stupidly democratic band. In that everybody really did have their vote, and we one of the reasons that we stayed together so long too is we shared the money very evenly, and we still do, and not a lot of bands can do that after so long either. Anyway, it is we are very much like family and brothers. We would open for anybody, and we would do a benefit show for most anybody if we believed in it. Of course, we used to do benefits for Red Cross, and I would never do that again. Now that I hear how horribly corrupt some of the people are, that we did benefits for back in the day. Oh my God! But anyway, we would do benefits for anybody. We would open for reggae bands for $200 back in the day because we loved reggae so much. And Harry would put us on tons of the shows because we were a good band, and we would do it for low money. But that's part of what helped us get started, and that's kind of a thing that when anybody's starting a band, I think that they have to think about doing is to try and help raise money for things that they believe in by doing benefits, by taking shows for lower money, opening for acts that they love, and by sharing the money equally rather than, I'm the songwriter, I named the band, I'm the singer, you're fired and I'm going to hire a guitar player so I can pay him less money. We've never done that. We've just never done that.
It's a perfect time to segue from your album, Chet's Last Call, to your current movie, your documentary, Chet's Last Call, that just came out a couple of months ago. And you mentioned before, I'm in it. Will you tell me how and why this started?
Well, when Chet died, we were all mourning through the Facebook site with photos and stories. And Tontaleo, who I knew through Chet, and was there, and anyway, we were all chatting, and we decided to do a memorial show, or Chet Stock Lives, I think is what we called it at first, and Tontaleo and I went to the bands I think we even put out an open call on the Facebook page, who wants to do this, and then we also called a lot of the bands, but Tontaleo and I put together this two memorial shows at Once Ballroom, and as it was getting closer to be the time that the shows were going to happen, somebody recommended that we film them, and then Tontaleo said yes, and we have to do a documentary, and who are we going to get to do it? I'm like, yeah, who are we going to get to do it? And we thought of different people, and then finally she said, Dan, it's going to have to be you, because I did a film called Steal Away with Jimmy Miller and my brother Ted back in 1989, which was shot at the Channel, Middle East, Fort Apache. Anyway, it came out good, but it was so much work, and it really sort of soured me on making films because I wasn't a wealthy guy, but it had to be shot on actual film, uh, 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 Super 18 and Super 16, 16 millimeter film, and it was very, very expensive to do 32 millimeter film. And it was very difficult in every way making that movie. It cost me a fortune, and it took years. And I knew when Totaleo asked me, there's her being the scene queen and me appreciating what Chet did for us so much, not just us, but so many bands that were friends of mine, started there. Dogzilla, who are still friends of mine, for instance, is a good example because such a great band. Basically, their first show was at Chet's too. Many of us used to.
What's the web address for people that are interested? They can check it out.
Chet'sLastCall.com.
What's the web address for people to find out what Bim Skala Bim and what you're up to is doing?
BimSka.com.
Okay, I mean, I just want to tell that.
Bim Skala Bim music on the Facebook page is actually much more active than the website and Instagram, because that's the way that is now. But Chet's Last Call has a Facebook page as well. But yeah, the Chet'sLastCall.com website is a good place to go for see a lot of rare stuff and outtakes. But you can rent the movie for $5 for a 3-day pass, or you can buy it for $15 at Chet'sLastCall.com, and that's the director's cut version. A shorter version was recently, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, on TV in Boston on what I call Channel 56, but it's like
LVI.
Like, on Xfinity, it's called one thing, and on the other side, it's called another thing. But I'm
in there a couple of times. But I don't remember, but I have dark stories about Chet. You know, like giving needles to him. I'm a diabetic. I remember asking my mother. I said, "This is like 1985." I remember saying, "Mom, I have a good friend. He's a junkie. He takes drugs." And I gave him some fresh needles because the government won't, and I don't want him to die. And I felt bad about it. And I even said that to my mother. I'm sure that made the cutting room floor.
You shouldn't. No, that's in the movie. That's in the director's cut for sure. But you did the right thing because using the same, because they would have used the old needles, and more people would have gotten sick. And more people would have gotten sick. And that's a proven fact. That's a proven fact. So don't ever question whether you did the right thing or not, because I feel you did. A story that I didn't tell in the movie, or it didn't make it into the movie. I actually did tell it, but it didn't make it into the movie. Chet denied me. I tried to buy heroin from him, and he said, have you ever done it before? I'm like, no, but I want to try it. He's like, nope. and I never did. Well, I mean, I got to be honest. I did try it many years later. But back then, if he'd have said yes, I could have been a young heroin addict. But even though he was a dealer usually doesn't turn anybody down. He wasn't that type of dealer, if that makes any sense. And that's just
to me it does.
That's just for the Wachtel audience. We decided to cut that out of the movie.
Wasn't Chet also a drug counselor for like 20 plus years or something?
Yes. After Chet left Chet's Last Call, he changed his name. He wasn't Chet no longer. He was Richard again. And he started going to university to become a counselor. And then he did thousands of hours of free counseling and finally got his degree and license to counsel, and did that for over 20 years, I believe, or maybe just right in at 20 years, counseling and rehabilitating hundreds, if not thousands of people, many of them musicians, many of them, well, a few of them were in the movie, but many of them didn't want to talk about that. And many of them didn't want to be in the movie and didn't want to talk about it. But Chet had a very personal experience with them. And as I say, as a former addict, nobody wants to be rehabilitated by somebody who has no clue what it's like to be an addict. And in that, Chet had all that experience of being an addict, a dealer, a mess, turning his life completely around, and now helping so many people for at least 5 times longer than he was actually an addict. It's a beautiful story.
Hey, the record release, the video documentary release party, that was great. I was there. It was at Once in Somerville, and I remember there I was talking to Xana Don't, who I hadn't seen for a long time. For all you people, Xana Don't, with the big bouffant, she sang country and western, Patsy Cline music. Just a great, great voice. She played Bun Raddies once, and
in
there
punk rock club. She played almost exclusively in punk rock clubs too, or rock clubs.
She played at Bun Raddies, but because of Mickey O. And I was sitting there. She introduced me to her father, and I sat while she was singing in the first table with her father. And she comes over afterwards, and he kept calling her Susanna. He didn't call her Xana, it was Susanna. So I still call her Susanna from time to time.
She was a help producing, and she's one of those people who really thinks that the film should do more than it has. And everybody, well, I don't want everybody, but most people have seen the film. And people like yourself and Boston Groupie News and people who have been following the Boston music scene for 40 years or 50 years, however long, love the movie. And that's kind of the litmus test for me, is people who were there love the movie. And it does sort of, even though it's kind of about one club specifically, it does sort of help get a feeling for the entire the 80s, that mid 80s scene that started early 80s, that sort of exploded into a real Boston thing, you know. But it wasn't any one specific music necessarily, but it was a lot. It was the fact that a lot of great music came out at the same time, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that my theory anyway is places like Chet's, which there weren't so many, but there were a lot of places back then that would accept the fact that Bim Skala Bim or the Dogmatics played at Chet's on Saturday, but they'd let us play Jumpin' Jack Flash 3 days later, or a Sunday, or a Thursday, or something. You know, so many bands were playing several times a week in Boston from the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in the mid 90s. I think they made a rule like, you know, the only club you can play is, you know, is one club per 2 months. You know, the bigger you get, the more of this kind of shit you would get. Back then, we would play every single gig we could book, and pretty much nobody complained. And the Dogmatics will tell you the same story. And will loads of bands. Scruffy would play.
Let me read you a quote from a guy who booked you a lot of those places. Chris Porter, he's the guy that you had the documentary release party at. He's booking Once now. He used to book Bun Raddies. He booked the Middle East, and he's now in Seattle and is a fest and event producer. But what he told me about you is, I recall booking Bim a bunch of times in the 90s and dealt with Dan for a couple of shows he did at Once. Dan was and is a hardworking guy who has done a lot of great work, both for his bands and for the Chet's documentary, which I hosted the release party at. A persistent guy without being annoying, it was always a pleasure to work with Dan on shows. Bim, of course, had a lot of success, and that's no doubt due to his and his bandmates' hard work they put into their music. What do you think about what he says about you? Just what you said about the booking.
Yeah, Chris has been a big help to so many bands for so long. He actually hosted a screening we did during the lockdowns that went really pretty well, and I got some much needed money at the time too. The Chet's Last Call movie, you know, is still well in the red, though we did make it for a really reasonable amount of money, and because so many people did it out of love and a passion project. But I run an Airbnb, and we by the sea, and during the lockdowns, nobody was here for a long, long time. We were living off of fumes, and JJ and Chris helped promote what was at the time called once virtual or something like that. And we premiered Chet's Last Call, and I actually made some money so I could buy food for a few weeks at that time. So that was really nice of him, and it went really well. He hosted that and did the interviews afterwards with Steve from the Pajama Slave Dancers and myself, and we debuted some new Dogmatics videos that we had shot at the Chet's thing, but had never edited until then. So and Bim stuff, and Pajama Slave Dancer stuff, and Liz Borden stuff. So since the Chet's movie, we've also sort of put together, with the help of Rudy, who's doing the documentary, Rudy Childs, put together a full length live thing that's sort of the full songs, rather than like the documentary. You only get a little bit of Sister Serena kind of thing, you know. So we put together with Rudy the many full songs by the bands from the Chet stock. So it's like a concert film rather than a documentary.
You know, Rudy came over to my apartment to interview me for the Dogmatics documentary, so I can't wait to see that. Dan, you have a new movie that you're working on right now. Tell me about it.
It's actually finished, AJ. It's called the New England Ska Summit, and it's a documentary about ska and reggae in New England. It's mostly shot at Once Ballroom again, and we have starring a band called El Grande from Maine, Bim Skala Bim, and Ricky Rocksteady from Boston. Let's see, the Copacetics from Rhode Island, and the Hempsteadies from Connecticut. So Jackie Starr from New Hampshire. So we got
cool
representatives in the ska community from each of the states in New England, but we made it sort of about ska all over as well. So
when's it coming out?
It's actually out and available for streaming at the same place under Vitale Brothers, and it's at gumroad.com. New England Ska Summit. If anybody just typed that into a search engine, New England Ska Summit, it comes up, or New England Ska Summit, the Vitale Brothers, or the Vitale Brothers at gumroad.com. Comes up. $5 for a 3-day unlimited streaming, and it kind of covers the ska and reggae scene, mostly ska, of course, in Boston and New England for the past 30 to 40 years. And we like the way it came out. It's gotten some good reviews, and it's sort of just getting started, though. It's also hard to know exactly what to do with film. We had a release planned at the theater in Arlington, where we did the release for Chet's Last Call, but all the lockdowns and the virus bullshit shut down so many things that it made it really hard to release the film. So we're sort of trying to figure out what our next move is on that. But it's available for rent through streaming at gumroad.com. New England Ska Summit.
So listen, Jackie Starr and you just had a new holiday Xmas song come out. Jackie used to be in Bim Skala Bim. Tell me about this. Tell me about the new song, the holiday song.
All right, it's called Best Gift, and it's not like Jackie and I haven't been working together. We've been singing together because since we got back together in 2009, most every year Jackie will come and do a couple of shows with us when we do batch of shows, especially in New Hampshire or Boston or Somerville or Cambridge. So we've been still singing, together and seeing each other over the years. But this past year, 22, she said, well, I have an idea for a Christmas song, but I'm not too happy with my words, but I got great chord changes and a great horn line. And she sent it to me. I'm like, yeah, I love this horn line. I love this chord changes. So I wrote words and melody over it, and then she worked the chorus melody as well. And we got together with John Petruccelli, and who played several instruments on it. He did the drum, bass, and trombone. And Jackie did guitar, which she didn't play on any Bim albums, but she's gotten to be a lot better guitar player over the years. She went from Bim she left Bim in maybe 88 or 89, I'm going to say. She was in the band maybe 3 years, and she moved to California and started her own band, and played and began playing much more guitar. But anyway, so after, I don't know, 30 years of not writing any songs together, we wrote a song together and recorded it, and it came out really good. I really liked it. She really liked it. And we released it on Christmas Eve, and it's called Best Gift, and you can get it at Jackie Starr Bandcamp. And a lot of people like it. We're pretty sure we'll be releasing a video for it next year. So it's more like put it out maybe at Thanksgiving next year with a full video and a remix.
Cool.
So
what Jackie told me was the special thing about Dan is his ability to connect with the audience. He is a real natural performer, and his voice is so unique. He reminds me of a crooner from the 40s, but I can't compare him to anyone in particular. I also admire the way he grooves to the music, and you can feel the joy he is experiencing with him. So many funny things happened while we were touring. One in particular was when Mark Ferranti, our bass player, took along a very large video recorder and would place it in random places while we played a show. One particular time, he had left it on the stage near his bass cabinet. When we looked at the footage, that is exactly what we saw, just our feet. You remember that one?
Mark still does that. The thing about Mark is, many people remember Ferranti Daggy in Harvard Square. Mark's father was a great supporter of Boston music, and he would hire many musicians. So the list of musicians that work at Ferranti Daggy is long. My brother Ted being one of them. And he was a great supporter of our music. As soon as we got the first album out, he bought 25 of them and put one of them up in the window at Ferranti Daggy in Harvard Square, and was selling our records out of a photo developing shop. Mark would bring cameras on tour, but he still does it, and he just puts them somewhere. Sometimes it's just on the snare drum, sometimes it's just on his butt. You just really never know, and it vibrates and moves around and stuff. It's very odd, Andy Warhol kind of stuff. I don't know, but some of the sound is good, and some of it's very weird. But Mark is also our archivist, which means he has a storage locker where all these things sit, from over the years, like tremendous amounts of still and video and film. and very little of it he releases. A lot of people don't know. Well, I mentioned SMAP before. So when Mark and I first met, we were shooting other bands like Kill Slug and Dogmatics and Mission Impossible and Noonday Underground at clubs because we joined SMAP in order to be able to have access to good video equipment and video editing equipment. So we were also early on in videotaping a lot of Boston bands. So that stuff is still there. And these guys, 30 and 40 years later, they know we have it, and Mark still hasn't come across with much of it. I don't know why. I have nothing to do with that. I would give it to them right away. But a lot of it is been sitting so long that it has to be cleaned in some way or baked in some way so that it could be actually seen. So
that's a future project.
Someday, yeah, someday. Maybe after I'm dead.
What's the current state of ska reggae music? Is it a cult genre today, or can a ska band support itself with its music in 2023?
Oh, it's pretty much bigger than ever, AJ. I don't know if you know, there's all these new labels starting. So many young bands. This Bad Time Records is doing real business, and I don't even know how it's possible. I don't know how to make any kind of reasonable money off Spotify or Apple Music or streaming. I used to think $18 was too much for a CD. That's for sure. But a couple of pennies is not so good either.
Yeah.
I don't get where it's going from here, but something's got to give. But anyway, there's just a tremendous amount of young ska bands in all different genres of ska. And reggae is still doing great. At least I think. A German magazine just put out the top 100 ska, reggae, and soul songs of 2022, and I have a song on it. A lot of friends have songs on it, but it's a real good mix of ska and reggae and different kinds of ska and different kinds of reggae. Because now ska punk is a very big thing, but traditional ska is a very big thing. Rocksteady is a very big thing. I'm working on an album that's kind of in a way a tribute to Prince Buster and big bands at the same time, with some great musicians around the world. This song that we have on this top 100 for 2022 is called "More That Unites," and it's a song that John Roy and Smoke and Mirrors sound system did, and myself and several other great musicians like Roger Rivas, who was from the Agrolites, really well known at this point as one of the best producers of reggae and ska. And chatting on it with me is a man named Roy Ellis, who was one of the original skinhead guys from a band called Simmerip. They call him the Boss, and very, very well known in England and throughout Europe, more than in America. But we're trying to rectify that. He's in his 70s, and man, he nailed this song. And it was just today that I found out it made it to number 26 for the year in the ska reggae charts from Germany.
Cool. Hey, currently you live in Bocas Del Toro. Does that mean mouth of the bull?
It sure does. That's what Columbus named it, supposedly. And then we have a Bocas del Drago, too, on the other side, which is the mouth of the dragon. And I love Bocas del Toro. It's nine big islands and a whole crap load of smaller islands. But it's a place where, for nightlife you can go from island to island, or on your boat go from dock to dock. And many of the people here came here reasons like me for inexpensive titleable property in a Caribbean, in a beautiful, still yet untouched Caribbean.
Well, you're running a bed and breakfast down there. How cool is that? Lookout Point Retreat. Describe it to me.
What's right on the water. We have great breakers right out in front. When the surf is up, we have great snorkeling right out in front, great fishing right out in front, great boating, kayaking, stand-up paddle boarding. The sea here is still clear. You can see right through the waves. We still have a pretty good amount of fish.
That's paradise, man. Sounds like it to me.
We have all the sea breeze all the time. A lot of people tend to relax when they're next to the sea, and a lot of it has to do with the salt air and the sound of the waves and the rhythm of the waves. People tend to calm down and able to sort of restart. The idea of a retreat, a place you go to rejuvenate.
And smoke chillums.
Yes, we have pretty reasonably priced weed here too.
I once read your favorite all-time album is The Harder They Come. How many times did you see it at the Orson Welles Theater in Mass Ave in Cambridge during the 80s?
I think I only went twice, but it was
no!
Yeah, it was life-changing. But I went out and bought that album and just wore it out. And it's still I just don't get sick of it. I can put it on once a month, and Lily and I are dancing around to it still.
You see, Dan, when I went to see in '74, when I came up to Boston from Springfield, New Jersey, small town, suburban town, half hour out of New York City, I had never been to a movie where everybody in the audience smoked weed. I couldn't believe it. I said, I must have died, and this must be heaven.
It was extremely cool that way. One of the things that reminds me of is for a lot of the Jamaican bands and ska bands like Madness, bands like Culture, bands like Selector, when Boston was their first stop coming out of Canada or coming over from Europe or coming up from Jamaica. Boston was the first stop many times, and we were opening for them. And the first thing that so many bands would ask me when I first meet them, like, Suggs, can we get some weed? So we finally realized that was kind of part of our job, was to welcome our friends from other countries into America for their first show in Boston of their tour, and get them high. And boy, we made a lot of friends that way.
I once read in the same article, you said the most overrated album was the Eagles' Hotel California, and anything from Madonna, Taylor Swift, and Metallica. Any changes to that?
I sort of remember saying it. No, I mean, that was a very specific question, but to qualify, it's when only certain albums or songs are allowed to be platinum, and that's what I really feel it is. I feel so many great artists are overlooked, and so many of those artists that I named are just overplayed to the point where it's just irrelevant. They shouldn't be overplaying 40 albums and not playing at all thousands of great albums. This is my feeling for a long time. You and I watched all the radio stations get bought up by the same three companies or whatever the hell it was, and tell all the DJs that they can't play whatever they want. Everything went from this awesome free form to being, corporate. And it was really tough to watch over the last 40 years, but I know you watched it and we lived it. And I don't like, a lot of the stuff that becomes ridiculously overplayed. And some of it's I'm sure good, but you can't even distinguish anymore. Once you hear a song 100 times, you're going to start singing along, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, along the same lines, do you have any advice for young ska reggae musicians trying to get their music heard in these tough post-pandemic times?
Take a lot of gigs. Especially when you're young and you have the energy, is to make a go of it. Make a really good record first, and then put it out and support it in every way you possibly can. Mostly by touring, mostly by doing various promotions on your social medias and stuff. But selling records at the shows is the way to build a fan base. But see, now I say that, but what do you sell them at a show anymore? Now it's T-shirts, and it's always been T-shirts. But now not many people buy CDs at shows, though we have them, and there's not. Most of the audience are not vinyl collectors, though say 10% of them maybe are, or even 20. There's that other 80 or 90% that they're looking for it to be streamed at this point. And so this is where my age comes in. I don't really know where it's all going to land. Right now, the musicians are not being supported enough directly by sales of their music. Online,
there's no way to see how much you sold.
And if you could see the numbers that Spotify and Apple Music and these streaming platforms are actually paying, and YouTube, it's disgusting. 0.0001 cent per stream or whatever it is. It's just a horror show. Musicians, never made great money in America. As soon as we started going to England and Europe, we realized, musicians are treated better everywhere else in the world than America.
Yeah.
But and respected for what they do as artists. Anyway, you have to want it from the bottom of your heart, and you have to not let your mind tell you that it's all about money, because it's just not. Music is an incredibly important way to communicate and to heal people, and if that should be your priority. I mean, you got to eat, you got to live, but if you're gonna make a lifetime career of it, if that's not your priority, it's not gonna work. It's not from the source, and it's not a vibration that, if you're thinking about commercialism and money, just forget it. Don't, please go away.
Dan, I got to ask you the final question I ask all my guests on my podcast. What was the first concert that you ever attended?
My girlfriend at the time, Kathleen, was obsessed with a man named Bruce Springsteen back in 1976. So I went to the Orpheum Theater to see, I believe, Bruce's first big Boston show. Not first Boston show, no, because I know he did some smaller shows. But right when the record had a couple of hits, and it was a classic Bruce Springsteen show, and I wasn't a fan going in, I was a fan going out, and I really was back in 1976. Dan, and I went for my girlfriend.
Dan, thank you so much for spending the time and talking to me. It's great to see you again, buddy.
Good to see you too. It really is. And there's so many great Wachtelligence episodes. Everybody, please check them all. They're in depth, and AJ really knows how to ask those questions. You, AJ, you know how to ask those questions that just delve deeper, and I feel comfortable talking to you. So obviously, things get more interesting.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.